I still remember the weight of that passbook in my hands, not heavy in money, heavy in meaning. It was old, its cover faded from deep blue to something closer to gray. The edges were soft, worn from years of being opened and closed by hands that shook just a little toward the end. My grandfather had given it to me 2 weeks before he died. He didn't say much when he handed it over. He just pressed it into my palm and whispered, "No matter what anyone tells you, don't throw this away." At the time, I thought it was sentimental nonsense. Grandpa was old school. He didn't trust online banking, credit cards, or apps. Everything important in his life existed on paper: documents, letters, receipts, and memories. I assumed the passbook held a small savings account, maybe enough to cover funeral flowers or a quiet dinner in his honor. I was wrong about a lot of things. After his funeral, life at home didn't slow down for grief, it accelerated into cruelty. My father changed after Grandpa died, or maybe he just stopped pretending. He began acting like he had inherited not just Grandpa's house, but his authority over all of us. Every decision, every object, every memory suddenly needed his approval. He cleaned Grandpa's room like he was erasing a crime scene, throwing out clothes, letters, even photo albums without asking. One evening, I found him standing by the trash bin holding the passbook. "This?" he scoffed, flipping it open and shut. "This is trash." My heart jumped. "Dad, don't." He tossed it into the bin like it was a grocery receipt. I froze. "You think your grandfather left you something special? He didn't even trust you with real money. Old men love drama, papers, promises, empty gestures." I reached for the bin, but he blocked me. "Enough," he snapped. "I'm the head of this family now. You don't need illusions." Illusions. That word burned. That night, after everyone slept, I quietly pulled the passbook from the trash. The cover was stained, the pages slightly damp, but the numbers inside were still legible. I wiped it clean and hid it under my mattress like a secret I wasn't allowed to have. Over the next few days, the tension grew. My father began talking openly about selling Grandpa's old land. My mother stayed silent, eyes lowered. My siblings avoided me completely, like I had already lost something they were eager to claim. I opened the passbook again and again, staring at the handwritten entries. Deposits, withdrawals, dates stretching back decades. There was more money than I expected, much more. But something didn't feel right. Some entries were missing, others were scratched out and rewritten, and in the back there was a handwritten note in my grandfather's unmistakable script. "If anything happens, go to the main branch, ask for the manager, tell him my name." I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I made a decision my father never expected me to make. I took the passbook, walked out of the house without telling anyone, and went straight to the bank. I had no idea that by the end of that visit, everything I believed about my family and my father would collapse. Because when the bank manager looked at the passbook, his face went pale. The manager slowly closed the passbook and said, "Who told you this account was trash?" And that's when I knew my father had lied about more than just money. The bank smelled like polished floors and quiet authority, the kind of place where whispers felt too loud and secrets seemed heavier than air. I clutched Grandpa's passbook to my chest as I waited in line, replaying my father's voice in my head. "This is trash." When my turn came, I slid the passbook across the counter to a young teller. She flipped through it casually at first until her eyebrows tightened. "I'll need to call the manager," she said, her tones suddenly careful. My stomach dropped. She disappeared through a glass door, leaving me alone with my thoughts and the growing fear that my father had been right, that this was all nothing but an old man's fantasy wrapped in paper. Then the manager walked out. He was in his late 50s, silver hair neatly combed, glasses resting low on his nose. The moment his eyes landed on the passbook, something in his expression changed. Not confusion, recognition. "Where did you get this?" he asked softly. "My grandfather gave it to me before he died." The manager didn't speak for a few seconds. He gestured toward his office. "Please, come with me." Inside, he closed the door and sat across from me, placing the passbook between us like a fragile artifact. "Your grandfather," he said slowly, "was one of our oldest account holders. He came here personally for over 40 years. My heart pounded. "So, it's real?" The manager let out a breath that sounded almost like relief. "More real than you realize." He turned the passbook toward me and tapped a specific page. "This account isn't just a savings account. It's a protected, trust-linked deposit, extremely uncommon now, especially for someone without formal education." I stared at the numbers, suddenly unable to breathe properly. "How much is in it?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he asked, "Did anyone else in your family know about this?" I hesitated, then I shook my head. "My father saw it. He said it was useless. He threw it away." The manager's jaw tightened. "Your grandfather was very clear. This account was not meant for your father." My pulse thundered in my ears. "What do you mean?" "He came in 6 months ago," he continued. "He requested changes, beneficiary updates, legal safeguards." My hands trembled. Safeguards against who? The manager met my eyes. "Against anyone who tried to claim this money without permission." I swallowed hard. He opened a drawer and pulled out a thin file. Inside were documents stamped and signed, my grandfather's shaky signature at the bottom. "This account," he said, "was created to protect assets your grandfather never trusted your father with." The room felt smaller. "Why?" I whispered. The manager's voice dropped. "Because your father tried to access this account years ago without authorization." The words hit me like a slap. My father, my own father. "He was denied," the manager went on. "After that, your grandfather limited access permanently. He told me, his exact words, that some people confuse blood with entitlement." I felt something crack inside my chest. Memories rushed back. Arguments, whispered phone calls, Grandpa hiding documents, Dad's sudden anger whenever money was mentioned. "Can I access it?" I asked quietly. The manager nodded. "Yes, but only you." He typed something into his computer, then paused. "There's one more thing," he said. "This passbook is only part of it." My breath caught. Part of what? He turned the screen toward me. "Your grandfather left instructions, and once you follow them, your family will come asking questions they don't want answered." The manager leaned closer and said, "If your father finds out what this account really holds, he won't forgive you for going to the bank." The manager turned the computer screen back toward himself, as if even the walls didn't deserve to see what was written there. He folded his hands and studied me carefully. "Before we go any further," he said, "I need to know something. Did your grandfather ever give you anything else? A key, a letter, anything that didn't make sense at the time?" My throat tightened. I thought of the small brass key taped inside an old birthday card I had almost thrown away. Grandpa had smiled that day and said, "Some doors aren't meant to be opened right away." I nodded slowly. "Yes, a key." The manager closed his eyes for a brief second, like someone who had been waiting years for confirmation. Then he trusted you more than I realized. He opened the file again and slid a photocopy toward me. At the top was a handwritten note in Grandpa's familiar slanted script. "If my son ever calls this useless, then my fears were right." I felt dizzy. Your grandfather suspected your father would try to take everything once he passed, not just money, property, documents, even your future. My future? I echoed. He nodded. This account was designed to release information in stages. The passbook was stage 1. The key is stage 2. He stood and walked to a secure cabinet built into the wall. After entering a code and unlocking it, he removed a small metal box and placed it on the desk between us. "This box," he said, "cannot be opened without that key." My hands shook as I took the brass key from my pocket. For a moment, I hesitated. Opening that box felt like crossing a line, one I could never uncross. But I turned the key. Inside were documents neatly arranged, along with a sealed envelope addressed to me in Grandpa's handwriting. I opened the letter first. "If you're reading this, then your father has already shown you who he truly is. I am sorry you had to learn this way." Tears blurred my vision. "I tried to correct my mistakes while I was alive. Your father believes family means ownership. I believe family means protection." The letter went on to explain everything my father had hidden from us: failed businesses, secret debts, and how Grandpa had quietly paid them off to keep the family from falling apart, again and again, until he realized his help was only feeding entitlement. "I stopped helping him," I whispered aloud. The manager nodded. That's when things got ugly. Beneath the letter were property records, land deeds, shares in a cooperative Grandpa had invested in decades ago, now worth far more than anyone would expect. And at the bottom was a legal document that made my breath stop: a conditional inheritance clause. "If your father attempts to sell my land or access my assets, all remaining holdings will transfer immediately to my grandchild." My hands flew to my mouth. "He's already talking about selling the land," I said. "He thinks it's his." The manager's voice hardened. "Then he has activated the clause." A sudden realization hit me. "So he's already lost it." "Yes," the manager said quietly. "He just doesn't know yet." My phone buzzed on the desk. Dad. I stared at the screen as it vibrated again and again. "He must have realized the passbook is gone," I murmured. The manager leaned back. "This is usually the point where families choose silence or war." I stood up, legs unsteady. "What happens next?" The manager met my eyes. "Next, you go home and you watch very carefully who suddenly starts being kind to you." I answered my father's call as I walked out of the bank. His voice was sharp. "Where did you go this morning?" I took a breath. "To the bank." There was a pause. Then, in a voice I had never heard before, he said, "We need to talk." When I walked into the house that evening, my father was smiling, too calmly, and I realized he still believed the inheritance was his. The house felt different the moment I stepped inside. Too quiet, too neat, the kind of calm that only exists before something explodes. My father was sitting at the dining table, hands folded, posture straight, like a man preparing for a business meeting, not a family conversation. My mother stood by the stove, stirring an empty pot that wasn't even turned on. She wouldn't look at me. "Sit," my father said, gesturing to the chair across from him. I did. For a moment, he just studied my face. Then he smiled. It was wrong, too warm, too rehearsed. "So you went to the bank today?" he said gently. "Yes." "No need to be defensive," he chuckled. "I was worried when I couldn't find that old passbook. I thought maybe you were upset." Upset? He had called it trash, thrown it away, and now he was pretending concern. "I just wanted to understand Grandpa's gift," I replied carefully. My father nodded, as if proud. "Good, that shows responsibility. Family responsibility." The word family felt heavy coming from him. He leaned forward. "You know, your grandfather was confused near the end, emotional. He didn't always understand what he was signing." My chest tightened. "The bank didn't think so." His smile flickered, but only for a second. Banks don't know families, he said smoothly. They know paperwork, and paperwork can be misleading. I said nothing. That seemed to bother him. You're young. You don't need to carry burdens meant for elders. If there's anything there, anything at all, it should be handled by me. Handled, like everything else he had touched and ruined. I think Grandpa trusted me, I said quietly. Silence dropped like a stone. Then my father laughed, loudly, artificially. Trusted you? He repeated. Don't be naive. He trusted me with this family for decades. I looked at my mother. She finally met my eyes and then looked away. That hurt more than his words. My father stood up and placed a hand on my shoulder. Why don't you give me the passbook? I'll take care of everything. You can focus on your life. His grip tightened slightly, just enough to remind me who he thought he was. I don't have it, I said. His hand froze. What do you mean? He asked. I mean, it's safe. The air shifted. He removed his hand slowly. Safe from whom? I stood up too. Safe from being thrown away. His eyes darkened. You're starting to sound ungrateful, he warned. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed again. A message from an unknown number. This is the bank. Please do not share any documents. Legal notice has been initiated. I locked the screen instantly, but my father noticed the movement. Who's messaging you? He asked sharply. No one important. His jaw clenched. You're hiding things. I met his stare, just like you did. The room went silent. Then, suddenly, he sighed and did something that shocked me. He apologized. I may have been harsh. Grief does that to people. Let's not fight. We're family. Family. That word again. This time, it sounded like a trap. That night, I lay awake listening to footsteps outside my door, whispered voices, drawers opening, papers rustling. They were searching, not for memories, for control. And I realized then the kindness wasn't forgiveness, it was strategy. The next morning, I discovered my father had already contacted a lawyer, convinced the inheritance would soon be his. I found the business card on the kitchen counter the next morning. Cream-colored, expensive paper, gold lettering. R. Malik, Estate and Property Law. My father hadn't even tried to hide it. He was already dressed in his formal suit, adjusting his cufflinks as if today were a celebration instead of a betrayal. When he saw me staring at the card, he smiled again, that same calm, confident smile that made my skin crawl. I thought it was time to handle things properly, he said. No more confusion. Whose confusion? I asked. He ignored the question. This lawyer is the best in the city, very experienced with inheritance disputes. Disputes. So that's what I was now, not his child, a problem to be managed. You didn't think to tell me? I asked. He shrugged. There was no need. These matters are usually handled by the eldest. The eldest or the Grady? The words slipped out before I could stop them. His eyes hardened instantly. Watch your mouth, he snapped. Everything I've done has been for this family. For yourself, I said. My mother flinched but stayed silent, always silent. An hour later, my father left for the lawyer's office, confident and satisfied. I waited exactly 10 minutes before grabbing my bag and heading out myself. Not to follow him, to go back to the bank. The manager was already expecting me. You received the notice? He asked as soon as I entered. I nodded. My father hired a lawyer. He sighed. We assumed he would. He slid a new document across the desk. This is why your grandfather prepared so carefully. The document was a recorded authorization, signed, stamped, and witnessed, explicitly stating that any attempt by my father to claim the assets would trigger a full audit of past transactions connected to Grandpa's accounts, including illegal access attempts. My stomach dropped. You mean? Yes, the manager said calmly. Your father didn't just try to access the funds years ago. He moved money, small amounts, quietly, hoping no one would notice. I felt sick. All of it was documented, he continued. Your grandfather chose not to press charges, on one condition, that the evidence remains sealed unless your father tried again. And now? I asked. Now, the manager said calmly, the seal is broken. That afternoon, my father came home furious. The confidence was gone, his face pale, his tie loosened, his movements sharp and frantic. That bank has no right, he shouted, slamming his briefcase down. They're accusing me of things that happened years ago. I stood in the doorway, heart pounding. Did you tell your lawyer the truth? He froze. Then he pointed at me. You did this. You went behind my back. No, I went where Grandpa told me to go. His voice dropped to a hiss. You ungrateful child. Do you know what you've done? Yes, I replied. I protected what he left me. He laughed bitterly. Left you? You think this ends well for you? Before I could answer, his phone rang. He glanced at the screen, and his face drained of all color. He answered slowly. Yes, I understand. No, I didn't realize. The call ended. He sank into a chair. What happened? My mother whispered. He didn't answer, but I knew, because my phone buzzed at the same time. Audit complete. Next step initiated. That night, I learned the lawyer my father trusted most had just withdrawn from his case. The house had never been so loud with silence. My father sat in the living room long after sunset, staring at nothing, his phone face down on the table like it had betrayed him. No shouting, no commands, just a man shrinking inside his own certainty. The lawyer never called back. By morning, the news had spread, not outside the house, but inside it, where it hurt most. My uncle arrived first, then my aunt, then 2 cousins who suddenly remembered we were family. They gathered in the living room, voices low, eyes sharp. Someone had talked. Someone always did. What audit? My uncle asked. My father straightened instantly. This is a misunderstanding. The bank is overreacting. The manager's words echoed in my head. Watch who suddenly starts being kind to you. My aunt turned to me. You went to the bank? Yes, I said. Her gaze shifted back to my father. Why didn't you tell us about this account? He hesitated just long enough. There was nothing to tell. It was sentimental nonsense. I reached into my bag and placed copies of the documents on the table. Deeds, records, Grandpa's letter. Sentimental nonsense doesn't come with legal stamps. The room changed. My uncle picked up a page and read silently. His jaw tightened. You tried to access father's money without permission? My father slammed his hand on the table. I was protecting it. From whom? My cousin snapped. From us? My mother finally spoke. Her voice was barely audible. Is it true? He didn't answer. That was answer enough. The truth spilled fast after that. Accusations, old grudges, stories of loans never repaid, promises never kept. Grandpa's quiet sacrifices suddenly made sense. He paid your debts, my uncle said, shaking his head, again and again. And you still tried to take more, my aunt added. My father looked around the room, realizing too late that the authority he relied on only worked when people believed in it. You all benefited, he said desperately. This family survived because of me. No, I said quietly. It survived despite you. Every eye turned to me. I took a breath. Grandpa knew this would happen. That's why he protected everything, not from strangers, from us, from him. That evening, the bank's legal notice arrived by courier. My father opened it with trembling hands. As he read, his shoulders sagged further and further. Full audit, asset freeze, pending investigation. The land sale he had planned? Canceled. The authority he flaunted? Gone. Later that night, he knocked on my door. I need your help, he said, voice low, stripped of command. I studied him, the man who threw away Grandpa's gift, who called it trash, who thought blood meant ownership. Help with what? I asked. He swallowed. The bank, the audit, if you talk to them. I shook my head. Grandpa already talked to them. He stepped closer. I'm your father, and I was your child when you threw away what mattered. He had no answer. The next morning, he packed a bag. No speeches, no apologies, just quiet defeat as he walked out of the house that had finally stopped protecting him. I stood at the window, watching him leave, knowing one thing for certain. This wasn't the end, because Grandpa hadn't just left me money, he'd left me responsibility. 2 days later, the bank manager called again and said, "There's one final instruction your grandfather left, something that will decide who truly deserves what remains." The bank manager's voice was calm, but I could hear something underneath it, respect. "Your grandfather was very precise," he said over the phone. "He believed money reveals character. That's why he left one final condition." I went to the bank that same afternoon. The office felt different this time, less intimidating, almost settled, like the building itself knew the truth had finally caught up. The manager placed a sealed envelope on the desk between us. "This was not meant to be opened until everything else played out," he said, "including your father's reaction." My fingers hovered over the envelope. "What if I don't like what's inside?" I asked. He gave a small smile. "Your grandfather assumed you would ask that." I opened it. Inside was a single letter and a legal addendum. The letter came first. "If you are reading this," Grandpa wrote, "then my son has already chosen pride over family. I hoped he wouldn't, but hope is not a plan." My throat tightened. "I am not leaving you this inheritance to reward you. I am leaving it to test you, because wealth without responsibility creates the same monster again." I looked up at the manager. He nodded. "Keep reading. You will receive full control of the assets, but only if you agree to one thing. You must use part of it to secure the family home for everyone, except the one who tried to own it." I felt tears spill onto the page. Grandpa hadn't wanted revenge. He wanted boundaries. The legal addendum explained everything. The house would be placed in a protected trust. My mother could live there for life. My siblings would have stability. Education funds would be set aside for the younger ones. And my father? Legally barred from claiming, selling, or controlling a single brick. "If you refuse," the manager said gently, "the assets go to charity instead." I didn't hesitate. "I accept," I said. That evening, I went home and gathered my family. I told them everything. There was crying, there was silence, there was relief. My mother held my hands and whispered, "Your grandfather was braver than all of us." A week later, my father tried to call. I didn't answer. Not out of anger, but clarity. Some people don't lose family because of money. They lose money because they forgot what family meant. Months passed. The land Grandpa loved was restored instead of sold. The house felt lighter, quieter, honest. And that old passbook? I framed it, not because of the money, but because once someone tried to throw away love disguised as paper, and failed.